If you grew up in the 90s or 2000s, you probably remember the quiet thrill of walking into Blockbuster on a Friday night and scanning shelves for the latest movies, video games, or TV shows to take home. It was a ritual that shaped the lives of millions over the span of decades. And while we all know that streaming services eventually overtook the video store experience, few understand how Blockbuster actually fell. But Blockbuster didn't just slowly fade from existence, it collapsed. And the reasons are far more complex than you might think. This is the story of how Blockbuster became a movie empire, and how that empire eventually crumbled. Blockbuster was founded in Dallas, Texas in 1985 by software developer David Cook. Years earlier, Cook had launched Cook Data Services, a company that built software for oil and gas firms. The business thrived at first, but when oil prices collapsed in the early 1980s, sales plummeted. Facing a shrinking market, Cook decided to pivot. With help from his wife Sandy, who had researched the video rental industry, he transitioned into a new business model: home entertainment. Cook realized that by 1985, more homes had VHS players than ever before. The video rental industry had exploded, growing by billions in just the past 2 years. Cook knew that now was the time to capitalize. The first store in Dallas was stocked with over 8,000 VHS tapes, a massive selection for the time. The store's business model was simple. Customers would rent out VHS tapes for a few days, return them, and would be charged late fees if they were returned late. Unlike the cluttered existing shops of the era, Blockbuster was clean, brightly lit, and extremely organized. It also featured a computerized system that automated checkouts and inventory, a move that was considered revolutionary back in 1985. In 1987, Blockbuster, now a modest chain of 19 stores, caught the attention of entrepreneur Wayne Huizenga, the man behind the multi-billion-dollar success of Waste Management. Huizenga saw more than a video rental business. He saw the blueprint for a global empire. Within the next 5 years, Blockbuster expanded from only 19 stores to over 3,000. By the early 90s, Blockbuster hadn't just grown, it dominated. That dominance caught the eye of media giant Viacom, which purchased the company in 1994 for a whopping $8.4 billion. With Viacom's backing, Blockbuster expanded even further, and by 2004, the company had reached its peak with over 9,000 locations worldwide. By this time, Blockbuster had become more than just a store. It had become Friday night for millions. But while Blockbuster had grown into what seemed like an impenetrable empire, cracks had already begun to form. By the late 90s, VHS tapes were fading and DVDs were taking over. At the same time, the internet was beginning to reshape how people consumed media. This is where Netflix enters the picture. Not as a streaming giant, but as a struggling startup with a bold idea: DVD rentals by mail. Netflix was founded in 1997 by Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph. Netflix's original business model was simple but revolutionary. Users would order DVDs online, receive them in the mail, and then return them without any late fees. It was a direct challenge to Blockbuster's core revenue stream, but Blockbuster was unimpressed. They dismissed Netflix as a niche startup that would never be able to compete with brick-and-mortar video stores. In 2000, Reed Hastings offered to sell Netflix to Blockbuster for $50 million. Looking back, it was the deal of the century. But Blockbuster's executives laughed Hastings out of the room. They still saw Netflix as a passing fad, a novelty service with no real value. It was a crucial mistake, and one that would play a major role in Blockbuster's downfall. But it wasn't the only one. For years, one of the biggest complaints customers had with the movie rental industry was late fees. If customers brought a rental back even a day late, they would be charged late fees, which often snowballed into more than the rental itself. Anyone who rented movies during this time period remembers the anxiety associated with these late fees all too well. But for Blockbuster, this wasn't a source of anxiety at all, as they made hundreds of millions of dollars off of this policy alone. Netflix saw the frustration surrounding late fees and built its brand around eliminating it. Netflix offered a service with no due dates and no late penalties. As Netflix gained traction and many customers became accustomed to the no late fee business model, the complaints against Blockbuster became louder. And Blockbuster finally tried to pivot. In 2005, Blockbuster launched a campaign that focused on the end of late fees. While this seemed like a great thing on paper, the new policy wasn't exactly as advertised. Under the new policy, Blockbuster charged customers the full retail price of the overdue item if it was more than 7 days late. If they returned the item after that, they would receive a refund but still had to pay a restocking fee. So while customers no longer paid a fee for returning a movie a day late fees weren't gone altogether. What was promised as the end of late fees turned out to be just another rebrand, one that misled customers. That move led to several lawsuits, ultimately costing Blockbuster millions in settlements. But the settlements were the least of Blockbuster's worries. The real damage was to its reputation. A brand once seen as trustworthy and familiar now looked deceptive and out of touch. Blockbuster's answer to the late fee backlash was to attempt to pivot into the digital space themselves. In 2006, Blockbuster launched Total Access. Total Access was a DVD by mail service that was designed to compete with Netflix, a move that would have been completely unnecessary had they just purchased Netflix back in 2000. For a brief moment, this pivot was successful, and Blockbuster even outpaced Netflix in growth for a short period of time. It seemed as if Blockbuster was finally moving toward the inevitable digital future of the rental industry, but then they retreated. Executives feared that Total Access would cause in-store rentals to decline and would ultimately cut funding for Total Access. This was Blockbuster's last real chance to evolve, and they let it slip. While Netflix was reshaping the rental industry online, Blockbuster also had to contend with strong competitors on the ground. Hollywood Video was another rental chain that held its own through the mid to late 2000s. Its lower prices and more relaxed policies attracted customers who felt burned by Blockbuster's rigid fees and corporate tone. For a while, Hollywood Video seemed like a viable alternative. But like Blockbuster, it couldn't survive the digital wave. The future wasn't in aisles and plastic cases. It was in algorithms and streaming queues. While Hollywood Video offered a short-lived alternative, Redbox reshaped the physical rental space and would dominate it for the next few years. Redbox's red kiosks began popping up outside of grocery stores, pharmacies, and malls all across the nation. These kiosks offer the newest rentals for much cheaper prices than Blockbuster, and offer the convenience of grabbing a movie after you picked up groceries and without ever having to interact with a physical person. While this new alternative may have seemed dystopian to some at the time, it ultimately ended up being the model that would take over the physical rental space. After witnessing the success of Redbox, Blockbuster attempted to launch kiosks of their own, but they were unfortunately too late as Redbox was already completely dominating this space. Blockbuster was once a company that was known for its innovation, but it was now once again following from behind. By 2010, Blockbuster had racked up massive amounts of debt. This was the result of years of missed opportunities, failure to innovate, strong competitors, and the 2008 financial crisis which caused consumers to cut back on discretionary spending. The company was ultimately forced to file for bankruptcy, closing hundreds of stores in the process. Dish Network acquired Blockbuster in 2011 for $320 million with hopes to revive the video rental giant, but ultimately failed as the damage had already been done. Netflix and streaming had now taken over, while Redbox owned the physical rental space, and Blockbuster's reputation was fractured. By 2014, nearly all of Blockbuster's remaining stores had closed their doors. The company that had once seemed like an unstoppable empire in the movie rental industry, with thousands of locations and millions of loyal customers worldwide, was now gone. Where Blockbuster was once a company that had been synonymous with Friday nights, it was now a relic of the past. Today, all that remains is one final store located in Bend, Oregon. This store serves as a monument to an era before streaming and the internet changed the way we watched movies forever. Ultimately, it wasn't just one thing that caused the collapse of Blockbuster. It wasn't just Netflix, it wasn't just Redbox, or even the 2008 financial crisis. It was death by hesitation, the failure to innovate, and underestimating competitors. While nearly everyone in the 90s or early 2000s believed Blockbuster was an unstoppable force, the problem was, they bought into their own hype. They simply believed they were too big to fail and that their business model was too good to ever need to innovate. It's a tale as old as time. Ego blinding a company to the world changing around it. You can see it in their decisions. When they had the chance to buy Netflix, they laughed them out of the room. They didn't see them as a real threat. Later, they tried to mimic Netflix's no late fees policy and launched their own digital service, Total Access. But even then, they hesitated, pulling back just as it started to gain traction. They clung to a dying model. Their failed attempt to compete with Redbox kiosks was just more proof. Blockbuster wasn't leading anymore. It was reacting. There's an alternate world where Blockbuster is currently still at the top of the entertainment landscape and is dominating the streaming space and setting trends. This would have been a likely scenario if Blockbuster had seized some of the opportunities given to them and had they kept their eye on the future instead of just what was working in the present. Blockbuster's refusal to continue improving is the reason they are no longer here today. While this documentary may be a case study in the downfall of Blockbuster, I think there's a lesson here that we can all apply to our own lives. It shows that even when we are at our best, it's always important to keep evolving, improving, and growing, because the landscape can change overnight. What worked yesterday might not be enough tomorrow, and as we race toward the AI revolution, that's something we should all remember. This was the Visionary Analyst. Like and subscribe to the channel and follow me on my social media linked in the description below. Stay tuned for the next video, where we will be decoding the psychology of waiting. Because sometimes in the silence of waiting, the mind reveals its patterns.